Living Adaptive.
The goal is to adapt and thrive despite the adversity you face.
You're going to have that little voice inside of you trying to push yourself.
I set a vision for myself, and now I'm seeing it come to fruition.
I'm grateful for losing my leg.
There's just some things you must endure in life.
You might crash.
You can find a purpose in your suffering.
I'm not going to stop.
You do everything you possibly can.
We want to change the world.
I'm going to adapt to it and make it the way it works for me.
Take what it is from life that you want and enjoy it.
What's up, everybody? This is Scott Davison. This is Living Adaptive. Remember, living_adaptive on Instagram, Living Adaptive on Facebook, Living Adaptive also on YouTube. So go subscribe there. We'll put the links there. We got a major guest, like a seriously major guest. It's been like a really good month, but this one is one of my favorite guests because he's limb different. He's cool shit. He's a comedian. My favorite thing is Ryan Niemiller. Thank you for being here, Ryan.
Hey, appreciate it, Scott. How are you doing?
Really good. It's a huge honor, man. I've been following you. Your story is like really important to me because I know how you grew up. I know what the life was like. In 2006, you hit comedy. And from comedy, like, well, first you were going to be a pro wrestler. You were a theater major. Then you like switched over to comedy and like seeing this trajectory, this walk, Irish bar, Alabama, 7 people. Like we could just keep going. And then eventually you get AGT and all this work with a disability sends like a really resounding, like, I'm here. I did it, man. This has to be all surreal for you.
Oh yeah, it definitely wasn't easy. And a lot of it's so strange to me now, because like, kind of like you mentioned, I did 12 years of comedy before I got AGT. And starting in tiny dive bars and, doing Elks Lodges and, all these kind of things where people didn't even know it was comedy night. Nobody remembered my name, nobody any of that. So like so much of my like work ethic and personality was based on kind of being the underdog, how I can overcome this, get people to take me seriously despite my disability, like I kind of, because it's hard, people don't want to take that seriously in entertainment. So me like fighting against it. So much of like what my mind and how I operated was, okay, it's me against the world. I got to work harder. I got to push harder. And then when I finally got that opportunity, it is a little surreal because like, obviously the work's not done, but now I'm like, oh, well, people are coming to my shows on purpose now. And people are,
they're paying.
So like you have to change your trajectory a little bit just because so much of my life was me versus the world. And now the world's starting to get on my side a little bit. So you have to shift gears a bit.
I love that you picked wrestling. Growing up as a kid, you picked wrestling. Of all the fucking things on earth you could pick. I picked running. I'm a club footer, limb different, impacted all the way down. Like we pick the oddest stuff, the stuff we're not supposed to be doing, maybe they say, and we just do it. And in comedy, man, you're out there, you're on a stage, everybody's looking at you, That's wild to be that brave. How'd you become so brave to just get out there and just flaunt it, man?
It's a hard thing to describe. I wish I could say there was some, meditation method or I did some sort of, but like, I always tell people I'm wired a little bit different. Yeah. Because like for me, and this will sound like I'm trying to humble brag or whatever, but it's 100% true how it works. AGT being in those buildings with, there was 3,000 to 5,000 people live in the building. And then also 10 to 15 million people watching at home. And then the thought in the back of your head of like, oh, it's going to be on YouTube and like all this other stuff. For me, that was easy. Like, that's kind of how I'm wired. Okay. I feel comfortable. I know when I get in front of a crowd, I can do my thing. I can make them do what I need to. I always had more trouble with stuff like if we were at a bar and you pointed to a cute girl over on the other side, yeah. And you were like, go talk to her. I'd be like, no, that's the scariest thing you could ever suggest.
Yeah. You just,
So for me, it was always, part of it is just having a disability. It's kind of a natural, like whether it's fair or not, I always felt like anytime I entered a room, I had to make everyone else comfortable. Because even if people aren't going to be outwardly mean to you, they're still, oh, do I need to help him with this? Should I say something? So you kind of get it. Like you have to like get everyone's tensions eased. So I was kind of a performer from the first time I was interacting with people because you have to make them realize that you're okay and then you can just exist, and I just happen to do that on a very, very large scale with something like AGT.
I think we can all relate to the side. Like, I was going to joke and say we have something in common. Like, I was runner up for class clown, senior year of high school. But like, the reality is we got something in common in the sense that we learned to joke to deflect the bullying. And you talk a ton about that, man. Like that developed you into like a fantastic speaker. I mean, you command a stage everywhere you go. How bad was the bullying growing up?
Like honestly, I feel like I was lucky because I didn't get bullied that much at all. Mm-hmm. But I think it was because I had this natural skill right away to realize, like, I'm talking kindergarten, the first time being around kids, I was like, oh, if I can get everyone to laugh, then they leave you alone. Awesome. Nobody messes with the funny kid. They like the funny kid, no matter what is going on with them. That's why, like, traditionally, I had to do a lot of work later because, if you make fun of yourself enough, it can mess with your self-esteem and your self-worth and all that. So that's a different story. But it's the reason that, like, so often, like, people can look back and the class clown was maybe someone that was overweight or, Matt might be the only black kid in a white school. Something that, like, if you're different and you could be a target, a lot of times you can learn to use that humor to kind of protect yourself and get everyone comfortable. And that's sort of, I was fortunate that it happened for me really fast. Obviously kids are kids. Kids are assholes, man. You know that,
sure. For sure.
they're going to say mean stuff. But like, I was always so much better at it that usually people were just like, all right, man, just cool. We like you. Just
the interviews, when you've had more interviews than anyone I've ever interviewed easily. And so like when you get interviewed, they skirt over this though. They don't hit it sometimes. Is that, man, you say, I didn't have a bed until I was in college. I grew up in a trailer park. I had a ton of siblings. Having a disability, growing up poor, like how different was that experience than a common experience with disability, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to 100% say because obviously I don't know any better. I don't have, the personal experience to have grown up not poor, So, but I can tell you just the experience from the people I've talked to who grew up poor and might not have a disability. Like that sucks by itself. Like it's rough. Like they did skim over it a little bit on AGT, but like that's 100% true. I didn't have a bed until college. That was the first time I had a bed. You don't realize how, and I think this is with a lot of things too. It was the same thing with my dad, being an alcoholic. You don't realize until you start getting out in the world a little bit more that that's not necessarily everyone else's normal. You think, oh, everyone's dad drinks too much sometimes. Nobody has a bed, like it's sort of, and you start getting out a little more and you're like, okay, wait, this isn't quite right. So, I mean, I think that helped me out a lot too, because, I can say I have character in spades because nothing was really easy. It taught me pretty quickly that like nothing's going to be given to you. No matter how much you whine or cry, and maybe you deserve. People who are poor don't deserve to be poor. It's not how the world works, but it is what it is. So you kind of have to learn. And I mentioned this during AGT. It was one of my favorite quotes. It kind of helped me with my disability too. Like I was, I had some depression and some sadness about it for a long time, but one day it just clicks. Being sad, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and I have arms. It's just not how it works. So you can either bitch and cry and moan and let it defeat you, or you can realize, hey, this sucks, but I can get some shit done still. And that's kind of eventually what I did.
In the adaptive community, it seems to be the ones that thrive the most, succeed the most, kind of carry that mindset. Like no matter what happens, we can't go back. We can't change that. We're going to adapt and thrive despite any challenge we face. And, the ones that make it really remarkable, that do very remarkable things, they don't have to hit the stage you're doing, but they could do something in their own art, their own thing, and hit something amazing. And it's that mindset that does that. I wondered though, when I was really researching, I dug into you a bunch and I was like, what was mom and dad like? Like, did they embrace the idea of the big word disability? What was it like growing up? Or were you just raised like everybody else?
My general feeling that I got, and I won't comment in the way to say whether I think this is right or not, but My disability was never really acknowledged that much because I don't think my parents had the resources, for one, or just the knowledge. There wasn't like a community. Like I said, we were poor trailer park people in a really small town. And despite my dad having his problems, I know he loved me. I know my mom loves me. She's one of my favorite human beings on the planet, obviously. But if you don't have a playbook, you don't know. Like, you gotta remember, I was born in 1982, so there wasn't exactly all this online community, like where it's a lot easier to find that now than it was then. So I think the path that my mom especially used was I was never told I couldn't do anything, so I was never prevented from trying anything. But unlike my other siblings, my mom never pushed me to do anything.
Gotcha.
Because I think in her mind, she was worried, like, well, if I push him to get swimming lessons, for instance, and he can't do it, it's going to ruin him. It's going to mess with his head. He's going to think he's worthless. He's going to think, so like the rest of my siblings, they got put into swim class. Me, because I didn't really like water. I'm a ginger. I don't like being outside.
yeah, for sure.
Sure. So it was one of those things where I was like, I don't like the pool that much, so it's fine. And to this day, I still can't swim. Just because it was kind of, and it's not a physical thing, it's a mental thing at this point. So I think they did their best given the circumstances. Again, I won't say it's the correct way or not the correct way, and nothing was mean spirited. I don't know if I have a kid with a disability, I don't know if I would do it that way. But it wasn't like I wasn't an embarrassment. It wasn't like I was hid away. It was anything he wants to do, we'll let him do it, but we also don't want to force him into anything in case he fails.
Yeah, we have that in common. I'm 2 years older than you. And so like that whole idea of like a hashtag to be like, comic talking about disability or whatever hashtag, or guy with shitty legs like me or something like that. But then we have a movement, by the way, Skip's Leg Day, everybody. So let's keep going with that. But like the whole thing is like, there was no hashtags. There was nothing. We figured it out. You made an active choice in college to get a degree a little bit more useful than mine, but theater, man. So like that mindset.
What is your degree in if theater is the more useful one?
Communications.
Yeah,
I beat you.
We're at least in the same ballpark there. Sure.
Yeah, yours has joy in it at least. Mine's like completely useless. Yeah, man. It's same thing, Midwest school. So same bullshit, like that whole idea. But you've always been really brave like that, man. When you went up on a stage though, they say, like I've heard this mentioned to you, and you have one of the more beautiful talks on it is that people say you talk about disability a lot in your comedy, which I love. I absolutely love. It's beautiful. You're speaking to everybody though, not just your fan here, but like you talk about like, I'm not going to stop talking about that. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. For me, it's important. I'm not trying not to get too whimsical or too philosophical about it, but anytime, because when the negative feedback that I got, because the bigger audience that you put yourself in front of, not everyone's going to love you. It's just the nature. You got to have a little thick skin. It's how this business works. So most people when I on AGT, they embraced me. They loved what I was doing. Some people were like, oh, he just talks about his disability. And in my head, like it always boggled my mind because what I'm talking about is my life. This isn't a gimmick. This isn't like makeup and costuming that I do. This is literally who I am and my life experiences. That's what you want out of a comic. All of the most successful comics in the world, think of any legendary comic. They're talking about their experiences. That's like if you tell Dave Chappelle, don't talk about what it's like to be a black man, all right? Because we don't want to hear. Like, no, it's not how it works. I'm talking about my life. And then the other way I look at it too, I don't got to tell you this, but there's still a lot of work to do for acceptance and just people embracing what we do and it not being a big deal. And, I make jokes about it. It's like, oh, if you don't want me to talk about my disability, how about you date me? We'll start with that. How about how about you hire me for a real job? Quote unquote. How about you not assume I can't do it? How about you stop staring at me in public just because I had the nerve to go buy groceries? When all that stops, I won't talk about this shit anymore. I don't want to speak for you, but I know a lot of the people that I know with disabilities, we don't love that we have to talk about this all the time.
Yeah, same
I would
here.
I would rather talk about so many other things in a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world. So if it's uncomfortable for you, well, go fuck yourself. I don't need you
Hell
at
yeah.
my show. This is what I do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And we need that attitude. That's like why I do this here. I take no sponsors. I'm like, let's spread the stories. Let's spread the mission. You know what I mean? This is a badass thing that you're doing here. You also speak out not just on disability side. You spoke out on the Black Lives Matter side. Hey, you took no prisoner. You're like, I'm not fucking around. Like, you can sit here and make your comments, but I'm not backing off. Do you think your life experience really lends that idea that you can speak out like this?
I think it does. And I always want to be careful when I talk about this because obviously, despite me being different, I'm not black. I didn't grow up in the world. So it's impossible for me to 100%, say, oh, I get it. I don't. But there is some parallels in the fact that, hey, we're both judged in a way for something that we didn't ask for or control or pick, out of a lineup. It's just how we ended up existing. And if that's going to cause I will absolutely support that. I don't have to fully get it. I don't have to fully be a part of it, but I respect and trust the African American individuals in my life enough that if they tell me, hey, this shit is bad, I'll go, okay, I got your back. I trust you. Because it's the same way with me. It's like an able-bodied person trying to tell me, oh, it's probably not that bad. Well, fuck you. You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't live this world,
Yeah,
you see me for an hour on stage and then you go home. You don't know what my life is. So, and it's the same thing. So if they're telling me it's bad and it hurts and there needs to be something changed, I will 100% support that. And anyone who doesn't like it, I'll make new fans. That's the way I look at it. Like I would rather be able to sleep at night knowing that at least I did whatever little part I could than be scared because some AGT fans might not like me anymore. They probably not going to buy tickets anyway. And if they do buy tickets, they're the ones that don't tip. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried about
Yeah,
it.
they're the hecklers anyways, usually. So there's no need for them. But I would say this, you said exist. This is how we came in, ding, elevator opens up. Scott, here you go. Here's who you are, for me. And then for you too. Would you change how you exist? Would you, if you could go into a DeLorean and kind of go there and then somehow mingle with whatever creates us, would you change it or would you go forward?
That's a question I struggle with because it's hard. It's hard to say. And I think one thing that a lot of people who are able-bodied might not fully understand is that even for people like us who are pretty well-adjusted, we've made lemonade out of lemons, to use a tired cliche. We've made the best of it. We accepted that this is what our reality is. It's fine. But would I have chosen this? No.
Yeah.
No. Who would go out of their way to choose hardship? There's a lot of things that are negative about this. There's a reason that it took me 12 to 13 years for anyone to notice me. And it wasn't because I didn't have any talent. There was things that were going against me that I had to fight against. So, I don't know any better. I love my life now. I'm not ashamed of who I am. But I don't know. I'm also a person too where it'd be it would be interesting kind of in a vacuum if I could get the perspective of an able-bodied person. And it sounds weird saying that because that's the norm, quote unquote. But I don't really get that perspective. I don't know what it's like to go grocery shopping and no one try to help you that you didn't ask for, So it might be an interesting experience to go back in and see what it's like to be normal.
Well, Ryan Niemiller, if you think about it, really, and this is I'm definitely building you up here and saying this, on terms of the stage, you're one of the biggest out there right now that actually has a disability, and then add that to make it even more unique, congenital disability in Hollywood right now. And so that's a big amount of pressure for you. Do you ever feel that pressure coming from us, especially? We're come on, Ryan, just win one more for us,
It has been a little pressure, but it's pressure. I welcome it and I work with it. I wouldn't be honest if I told you that when I got into comedy or when I got on AGT that it was because I want to be an inspiration and I want to like that has been a happy bonus, but like 'cause for me, just in general, I think it's so disingenuous when someone's like, I want to inspire people. Who the hell are you? Just go live and do stuff. And if people are inspired by it, that's an awesome side effect. I mentioned this, it was during my audition. I said this, growing up, there was no one that looked like me on television. No one. The closest was Jim Abbott. That would be like the closest I would say for that. But there was no one like in movies or comedy or television or anything that had anything close to what I have. And now it feels like it's me.
It's just you. Bro, it's just you.
And then a couple of my friends like, do you know Angel Jafira?
Yes. You're friends with Brad Williams and a few others. And
there's a few of us. But like we're still like looked at as like this... not novelty per se, but like it's unique because like look how different this is. Instead of it just being a thing that happens to be, So for right now, and the way I kind of looked at it is like, well, if no one else is gonna do it, well, fuck it, I'll do it. Like I'll get out there and make this happen. And now that it's happened, and just like all of the people that have reached out to me, either individuals with disabilities or like parents of children who have disabilities and, scared parents who like don't know if their kids are going to be okay or be able to do what they want to and all that, to kind of be like an example of like, hey, yeah, this sucks, but you can still get it done. It's something I take seriously. Again, not what I was going out to do, but now that I've done it, I'm happy to kind of carry that torch for a while.
What's you like, speaking to dive in a little bit deeper in that, what's your top 103 to 120 tips you tell parents? No, I'm just kidding. Like they ask for like heavy shit sometimes, like they really do. But like, besides telling them like it's possible, like you're probably asked a ton of questions, man. You're asked a ton of questions. What kind of questions do you get?
I made the joke about it on the show, but one I still get, like, is it genetics, or are you worried about giving it to your kids and things like that? A lot like kind of like what you mentioned. Do you get bullied? Like, how'd you deal with bullies? How do you deal with that? How did you overcome, to get noticed in a field like entertainment, which is very, for better or worse, it's based a lot on your appearance. Like that's a big deal. That's a big part of who you are. And, for me, it's always just embrace who you are. Because again, we can't change. You can do little tweaks. I could dress better. I can maybe get a haircut that does that. You can do little things, but you still are who you are. So and then realize, like, I try to tell people, you can make that into an advantage as well, because as much work as I had to put in to get someone to take a chance on me because of how different I was compared to other comedians, I'm also really the only comedian who has anything like this. So I kind of have, that market cornered, so it lets me, so not only am I getting booked for, comedy clubs because of everything from AGT, but I'm getting booked, schools are bringing me in to talk now. And like, there's not to get into this being all about how much money you can make, but there's a lot of opportunities that are also available because I have this disability.
Leveraging it always. We just had a discussion about it. We talk about it all the time. Grow that content, grow that product. And see what you can.
We have to deal with so much negative that I don't think it is wrong of us to also get some positive out of it too, because it is what it is. Comedy is a hard business no matter who the hell you are. So if I have something that makes me different and makes me stand out, and I have the talent behind it to make it work, why would I not? It goes back to what we were talking about, like, oh, well, he just talks about his disability. Yeah, because otherwise I'm a mid-30s white dude with a beard. There's millions of us in comedy. Why would I want to be like everyone else?
And it's not just comedy. Like, I don't get questions about like, hey, Scott, how'd you do in Fortnite last night? You know what I mean? Like, I get questions like, dude, what's up with your fucking legs? Tell me about it. And tell me the worst fucking thing that happened because of them, and then give me a resolution so I can feel better once we're done. Which I get used to it. I just start going on a random like I was born different. Bye. I'm doing great. Thank you. Bye. You know, like you get used to that.
Oh yeah, that inspiration porn is so.
It's pretty intense.
It's so intense. Yeah, and they don't like, and that's the thing I always try to educate a little bit too. Is like. You can't snap on every single person who slightly offends you because you just won't get anything done that way.
No.
But people also need to know it's like, oh, you think you're doing a good thing, but tell them about like how good I'm doing with these. Yeah. It is like when you tell a black person you speak really well.
It's exactly that.
Like
That's
you're an asshole. Like you might be coming from a spot where you think it's like a compliment, but you're just ignorant to what's actually happening. So those people, I feel you can educate and teach a little bit and like let them know, okay, I know you probably mean well, but this is nonsense.
That's great. That's a great way of wording it. Chris Jericho, you had a hero, man. You had a fucking hero that was out there like crushing. And then all of a sudden, next thing I know, you're eating Thanksgiving with your hero, man.
Yeah. It's the strangest thing. So we made a little mention of it earlier. Huge pro wrestling fan. That's where the Cripple Threat name came from.
So good.
That's where all that was from. It was going to be my wrestling. I'm legit. I've watched wrestling for 25 plus years. I still watch it now. It's my thing. It's larger than life. It's silly, but it's silly by design. It's a combination of theater and sports, which I love both those things. It's perfect for me. So Chris Jericho has always been amongst my favorite wrestlers. So not to get too much into the weeds here in case people listening aren't huge wrestling fans, but Chris Jericho has one of the most famous debuts of all time in WWF when he came over from WCW in 1999. Big countdown clock that they'd been building for weeks. He was the reveal. I happened to be in the building live that night. So it wasn't because of that, but it just happened to work out. I grew up near Chicago. We had tickets to that. It was like a late birthday present. And being in that building and just kind of feeling that energy and reaction, like I still get goosebumps thinking about it now. Like I can remember exactly that experience. So that was a huge moment in my life that sold me on like, I want to be an entertainer. At the time, I thought it was going to be pro wrestler. But I definitely knew I wanted that rush. I wanted to be able to make people feel the way that moment made me feel. Fast forward to AGT, when we got into the semifinals, they start planning because they don't know who's going to make the finals at that point. But there's always like a duet, some sort of celebrity performance with all of the contestants. The singers are easy. You get someone to come in, you sing a song with them. Yeah. It's what it is. You can't. I can't really do like a duet with Dave Chappelle, where we, it just doesn't work that way for comedy. I had kind of did the branding with all the Cripple Threat and the Club Nub and all that, just pro wrestling 101 stuff on AGT. And they kind of asked me, okay, who are your favorite pro wrestlers? So I gave them a short list. It was like Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and I told them my top one would be Chris Jericho. I didn't think they had any chance of getting him, though, because now that he wrestles with AEW isn't a part of NBC Universal. So I kind of figured it'd be one of those things. Well, obviously, I'd want him, but since he works for the competition, NBC's going to want to get someone from WWE, which still would have been amazing. Don't get me wrong. It still would have been great. But he was my dude. So it was either a thing that they liked me enough to make it happen anyway, or they just didn't care. One of the other. Yeah. So it was like a surreal moment because they asked me about it and I kind of forgot about it because you're doing so much during that time that you don't have time to like remember. Like you're just trying to stay above water because it's super stressful. We were watching. I was in a hotel room with some of the other contestants that were in the semifinals. We were just hanging out watching the semifinal from the other week. So we were just watching that. And then randomly kind of sitting in there, I was like, oh shit, Chris Jericho just followed me on Twitter. What?
Wow.
Yeah, and then he sent me a DM and like quoted one of my jokes, the lobster dad joke.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is crazy. But I figured, hey, I'd mentioned pro wrestling. I had a couple other pro wrestlers who had I'm friends with like the Young Bucks and some of the guys from AEW. So like I'm sort of connected. So I was just like, oh, this is a really cool thing. That's awesome. And then I found out when I made the finals, oh yeah, this is what we're doing. Chris Jericho is going to be in town. He took a look at what you did, liked you enough to kind of make time in his schedule, because he didn't have to do it. Jericho is in a position where he's established enough that he doesn't need this TV spot to bolster him, you know? So he came, and his band was, I guess, opening for Iron Maiden that night, which was a huge dream of his. But he took like 5 hours of his day to film this with us first. And, you know, we hit it off right away. Like all the stuff we did, you know, in the video was improv. We had the basic strike, but like we just played off each other. It was the coolest moment. And like it was so nice to kind of have, because I've met enough famous people just with what I do. Some are amazing, some are dicks, and you just don't know. And people are people, and I don't fault anyone for whatever their personality is. But it is a little disappointing when you meet someone you really admire
and they suck,
and they're just like, oh God, you're so unpleasant. But Jericho was amazing. Yeah, we still text now. You know, like you said, I had Thanksgiving at his house. He lives in Tampa, and I was just doing some shows down there Thanksgiving weekend, and him and his wife saw that, and they were like, well, do you have anywhere to go? And I was like, well, no, I'm just down here working and stuff. And he's like, well, you're coming over to our house. And again, I didn't ask him. There's nothing I can really give him. You know, I can't give him a boost in entertainment that he doesn't already have, you know. So it's just a good dude. And it's one of the coolest things that, you know, like I'm honored just to have him as a friend now because he's just a great guy. But 16-year-old me is also going, holy shit.
Yeah, this is him. Man, but like for me, where I become really fanned out, well, of course, wrestling. I mean, my Fridays, I was telling Catherine Beatty, I interviewed her. She's an NCIS writer. Anyways, I was like, my Fridays were like, you know, like who's the boss and this, but my Saturdays were wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That was it. That got me through some lonely period. Like I was really awkward kid for some points, nothing to do with disability, just awkward. And anyways, like I will say this though, you're alumni from Ice House, the Ice House, man. You're a comedian from there, yeah. Man. That's amazing. Like who'd you work with?
That's where I started. Yeah. That was my technical first like dive into stand up was when I moved out to Los Angeles area. I was living in Pasadena. I didn't know where else to start. And I found that there was a class being taught at the Ice House. And yeah, it's still one of my favorite venues to this day. I love that place.
That's incredible where you came from, man. And like how you started with this. I mean, you started with a monster crew. That's what a lot of people in our community, any community that I've been within, is they don't understand is that, like you said, 2006 is when you were like really grinding it out, like really working hard. This doesn't just come up. Like AGT doesn't just pop up and be like, hey, let's get this random guy off the street. You've been working from town to town. What's that grind like for people that don't understand comedy?
It is a lot of sacrifice. And, you know, there's an old joke that we say in stand-up, you know, it takes about 15 years to become an overnight sensation like that. And that's sort of how it works because so many people, and you know, I no one needs to be a hipster fan that they're like, oh, I knew Ryan Niemiller before TV, because that's just not how it works. You get on television, more eyes see you, they become fans. I love them dearly. But a lot of people, they don't see that part because they're not necessarily comedy fans. They just watched AGT, you know? So then they see this and they're like, this guy's amazing. And they didn't see the 12 years, you know. I told those stories and they're 100% true. Driving 12 hours and sleeping in my car so I could get to gigs and barely make any money, you know, make a little food money. You know, even this, like, I don't tell this often, but when I got my AGT audition, I drove from Indiana to LA for that audition. My car basically exploded once I got to California. So it got me there. The engine just, like, I had to put like $1,500 to $2,000 worth of repairs to be able to get back home. So that put even extra pressure because, like Like, imagine how much that would have sucked, and if I would have blown my audition.
Yeah. Oh
You
my
know, like
God.
if I would have got there. So like even up until that moment, I was still doing that. I slept in my car along the way because I didn't really have a ton of extra money to be staying in hotels. So like it was a situation like it is a struggle. Comedy is an expensive hobby for a while. You put more into it than you get back. But the thing is, you get those reps in. You have to practice. You have to do it in front of real people. You have to do all these different scenarios, you know, because a dive bar is not the same as a comedy club, is not the same as AGT. Those are different. So you have to be well versed in everything. So it's, you know, I've done literally thousands of shows over the years, and it all led up to that 2.5 minutes.
You did not have to roll over though. Like I think of this, I mean, you could roll over, you could give up. Like there was a million times where you probably walked in there and you're like, fuck this. And I know you've quit comedy for short periods of time in your story, 4 months, John. So you're like, I can't do this, you know, office shit or Target or whatever else. I can't do it. What drove you to not just like, what was it? What was the thing that just made you keep going? Was it a person? What was it?
It was mostly just not wanting to disappoint myself. You know, like I think one of the things that a lot of people, you know, when they talk about following their dreams, that kind of gets glossed over sometimes, is that it's okay to doubt yourself sometimes and to want to quit. And because it takes a lot more. You're not a complete person if all you are is this robot who is like, I will not quit under any circumstances. Like, that's not how human beings are designed. Like it doesn't mean anything to you if you just have this like laser focus that no matter what, because it also keeps you from being self-aware. You have to know that one of my biggest traits in comedy is I'm very self-aware. So I know when jokes work, I know when they don't, I know when I crushed, I know when I bomb. That's harder than a lot of people don't deal with that well. They don't know when they're good and they don't know when they're bad. So for me, it was just like I didn't want to let a business that's not necessarily designed for me beat me without trying, you know, without fully going. Because I'd always done these kind of day jobs. Just, you have to survive. It's hard to be full-time comedy. It just is. So I would always be working at places like Target or Starbucks or, you know, all these little side jobs. But I was never happy doing them. And occasionally society pressures get to you. Some of the times I've quit was because, well, the people I grew up with and graduated high school with, they own a house and they have kids, and I'm still in this tiny apartment, barely getting by. That's, you know, that's personal. That's a cool part of your personality when you're 22. When you're 35, it gets a little different. You know, it's like, okay, am I wasting my time? Am I going to get this shot? And luckily, I just always had in the back of my head, I was like, all it's going to take is for one important person to say yes, and I know I will crush it. Once I got America's Got Talent, once they gave me the, okay, you're going to get to audition in front of the judges, I knew that moment I was going to be in the finals.
Wow.
I knew, because I was like, I'm so prepared for this, and I've worked so hard for it. I'm not going to let it go by. You know, I think we all knew Cody Lee was going to win.
Yeah.
So that was a little different ballpark. But
I thought
it was. But it was still a thing, like, I know, like, in that show, if you're a comic and you make the finals, you're set for a long time. And I knew the system. I knew that my biggest strength was going to be the fact that I can talk. I'm an old pro wrestling fan. So, you know, it was all pro wrestling promos. Like all my entrances coming out on stage were so, like, it was pro wrestling entrances. It was, like, getting fired up and, like, doing all that. And like the show, that they loved me for that, because they knew, you know, for the other people, and they're great friends of mine and they're super talented, but a lot of like the singers and stuff like that, they're good at singing. For the kids, they're just not seasoned performers yet. They just have angelic voices and they're amazing, but they haven't figured out that showmanship yet. That was something I knew I had an advantage over every other person on that show. I was like, I can go out there, and even when I'm not doing my talent, I can make this work.
You're living the fantasy, man, of like many people want. Like, you can actually go back to your high school reunion and be like, I did it. I fucking did it, guys.
Yeah, it's weird being the biggest thing that's ever happened to my hometown.
What is your hometown?
And I don't say that to be cocky. I just have such a small hometown.
Yeah.
Like we threw a huge party when we got our first stoplight. Like that's the kind of hometown.
Where are you from, man? Let's put it on the map.
It's a little town called DeMott, Indiana. So it's in northwest Indiana, about an hour and change away from Chicago.
Oh, that's Gaffigan's turf up there.
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of around there. Yeah, so he grew up in Chesterton, so that's about 45 minutes away. So yeah, the region is what it's called in Indiana.
Wow, you got some hard hitters up there, man. I guess like the cold weather just gets you guys kind of cracking jokes and everything, man.
Yeah, Gaffigan was actually an influence of mine for that reason. Well, like obviously Gaffigan's brilliant and he's super funny, but for me it was kind of always in the back of my head like, well, if he can make it from this podunk, area, it's not a place that you would think entertainment really exists.
I don't know.
Like, if he can make it big, well, hell, I can make it big from here too.
Have you had that experience though? High school people are like, hey man, like remember me? Like,
Oh, I joke about it, but like, I know for most people when they're growing up, they're lucky if they have one best friend. I apparently had hundreds. I've had hundreds of really, and I get it. Like a lot of people get like offended by it for whatever reason. I think it's people coming out of the woodwork, but like no one's asking me for money. Like it's nothing like that. People are just excited that, and again, I come from a hometown where this doesn't happen. We don't get this like huge national worldwide recognition for something positive. So I come from a hometown where there's a lot of stories of like, heroin overdoses so it's a lot of negative stuff. So for people to be excited that there was a big positive thing happening, like, I don't blame them. So I didn't get offended. And for me, like a lot of it was just nice to like, oh yeah, we did have history together. Like it kind of like brought back these memories for me as well, of like, because even though growing up wasn't always the most positive experiences, it's important not to block that all out either.
Sure.
Because then you can't chart your progress of like where you were to where you are.
What were you like? Is it like in high school? Were you always in trouble for like kind of goofing off, dropping some jokes?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I was class clown. I was like our homecoming king. I was super.
Whoa, you're the king?
Oh yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and it was just because I was funny. Like, and guys, that's the thing. I was an awkward, I didn't dress well. I'm a big dude, and like in high school, that's a weird stage to be. But I was just funny, and I was never funny at the expense of other people.
Wow.
So I think that's why people like me. I wasn't funny because I was making fun of the gay kid or making fun of, it was nothing like that. Like I was funny because I would make fun of me. And I would bring people up, so like I was able to, go from, to use tired cliches and stereotypes of high school. But, I played football, so I was cool with the jocks. And, I also did like improv and theater classes, so I was cool with the theater nerds. Yeah. And like, so I could kind of bounce to anybody. And for me, I was just like, oh, all these people are interesting in their own way. And, so by default, then it made me pretty popular. So again, it was part of why I didn't get picked on that much, was because everyone just liked me because I tried to be positive, even if I was dealing with my own shit and trying to get through it, and home life wasn't great, and being, going through puberty and stuff with a disability and all that. But I never let that show to everybody else because I felt it was my job to keep everyone else up.
You're dating, or you have a girlfriend.
I do.
Yeah. It's not dating anymore. I don't even know the term for it, but you have a girlfriend. You guys recently moved to Los Angeles, man. What makes you finally make that move back to LA, man? I know that it was kind of like LA is what you said. When I listened to you before, it's very much that 10 million piled on each other in their own world, not there. You're back now, man. What do you plan to do?
So big reason I moved here. So the girlfriend, actually, she's from this area. So she already lived here. In a perfect world, like, I love working in Los Angeles. I don't like living in Los Angeles proper. Like I'm an old trailer park kid from a really small rural town. Like I kind of like in between. I love Indianapolis because for me it was the perfect combination of like, it's a big enough city where there's like pro sports and concerts and there's like theater and there's like a lot of stuff to do, but like it's also like if traffic's bad, it's going to add 10 minutes to your day.
Yeah,
you
like
know,
that
it's one of
hour.
those type of cities. Exactly. So for me, part of why I moved out here, you know, the heart makes you do things, you know, like she works, her job can't be moved. I can do my job from anywhere. So there's also that. And also just career wise, you know, I want to do TV. I want to do film. You know, there's more. I love stand up and I'll never quit. But like, if in 5 years I'm still the guy from AGT, I screwed up somewhere. You know, it should be the next step. Like that's a huge milestone and I'm super proud of it. But I think the reason I got AGT in the first place is that I wasn't content just
Where you
getting
were.
to do comedy gigs, you know? So it's like AGT was awesome. I'm enjoying it. What's next?
Yeah, why don't you have a podcast, like a show? Like a lot of comedians have it. Like you fucking crush it, man. You're hilarious. You can hold a conversation. What's up?
We're working on it.
Okay.
A lot of it was just, you know, part of it was excuse. I have this thing in my head, and I need to get over it, is that like when I'm trying to do something, I want it to be perfect before I start. And so sometimes that makes you not start at all because you're like, well, how do I guarantee that this will happen and this format will work? Sometimes, like, you know, to be a little crude, you got to shit or get off the pot. Sometimes you just got to get something out there and then maybe mess up a few times and figure out what works for you. And that's been a big part of it. I didn't want to throw something out just for the sake of throwing something out. But sometimes people just want to hear you, and like that's enough. And I had to realize that as well. Like this doesn't have to have some huge innovative theme. Sometimes they just want to hear people they like talking about their thoughts on things, and that's cool too. So it's something we're working on.
I could give an hour of my time to listen to you rant on LA traffic. No fucking problem. I could easily devote that. I could neglect the kids. I think it would be worth it, man. I think it'd be worth to hear your. I want to get to this though. Like, I've been around enough celebrities. You know, I've interviewed celebrities and worked around them. You stay super fucking grounded. Like, you're super grounded, super real. I know you're booked left and right. I mean, COVID. But, like, let's say, like, when COVID's not on, everybody wants you. How do you stay grounded to be cool to, like, everyone?
It's because I've been doing this a long time. Part of it was having the right people get a hold of me early. So when I was first starting comedy, you know, like we mentioned Brad Williams earlier, he's one of my best friends in comedy because not only do we have something similar where we know the struggles, but he gets the business and he understands. Like he gave me some of the best advice I ever had was when you think you're ready for something in comedy, wait 2 years and then you probably actually are. You know, so like he was just so good with stuff like that. And the other thing too, especially being a road comic, because I didn't just stay in LA or New York and kind of work it there. I worked the road, and I've worked with plenty of people over the years when I was like hosting or featuring like these headliners who were huge in the 80s, who are now doing the same moose lodges.
Oh no,
that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So part of what helps keep me grounded is knowing none of this is guaranteed. Just because like I had this huge blow up and things are hot right now, the world is what it is, you know, and I might need those gigs one day. And the other thing too, even just from like a selfish standpoint, even if you want to be completely selfish, it doesn't make sense to be a dick in this business. Because even if you don't care at all about anybody, you don't know the amount of people that I used to do open mics with or who booked tiny little garbage rooms who now book huge comedy clubs and stuff. Like, so even from just why burn this bridge by being a dick? Because you don't know who's going to become what. You know, so it just doesn't make any sense. And plus, like, man, this job's hard, man. You're away from your family. You're away from your friends. You live in hotels. Who wants to be an asshole? Like you gotta get some positivity out of it, because as much as I love this job and love performing, it's rough. You miss birthdays, you miss holidays, you know, when the world is open, you know, I'm gone 4, 5 days a week. Sometimes I'm gone for 3, 4 weeks in a row just because it makes sense routing to stay out somewhere. So it's like you're away a lot. So I'd rather be pleasant and try to enjoy myself in the meantime.
That's pretty amazing that you can stay grounded like that. I hate to get philosophical. Actually, I really want to get what's it all about for you, man? This life. What's this all about for you? Why are you here?
For me, it's part of it's ego. I want people to see me as something more than just a pair of weird arms. Like that. That's a huge part of it. I love proving people wrong, and I love that. That's a huge part of just who I am. That motivates me. It powers me. But at the end of the day as well, like, stuff that's like starting to motivate me now, like I'm not married. I don't have kids. I just turned 38, like that's important to me too. I had a kind of rough family life growing up, and I'm really close to my mom and my siblings now, but that took a long time. Mm-hmm. And like that's important. So I just want to, not to get too cheesy, but I just want to spread some happiness. Life's hard, and I still go through it, man. I still have fights with depression and not feeling good enough, and like we're humans, man. It's part of it. And this quarantine's been rough on my brain because like I went from being beloved and like kind of selling out comedy shows to suddenly nothing. Yeah. And that messes with your head, So I just want to be able to bring positivity to people in the best way I can. Just selfishly for me, it makes me happy too. So I just want to kind of leave the world a little better around me than what I started with.
I think you most certainly did, man. Like you don't want the word inspiration at times. Nobody wants like just to be slapped with that, but you do offer that inspiration, that perseverance that a lot of people won't understand. They can't understand. Your walk is different than my walk and everybody else's walk. And to make it to where you did, that just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It has to be you got to be so fucking good at what you do to be there. And you got to respect that, man. And that's so fucking amazing, man.
Yeah. And you need a lot of luck too. Like I don't say it to be humble, but like, man, you can be incredibly good at something and still never get your break just because you happen to not get lucky and have the right people see you. Like getting AGT from Indiana was hard. You can do it in LA because, the producers of the show will go to watch comedy shows, and then ask you to come audition, They're not doing that. They're not showing up to my Elks Lodge gig in Southern Indiana. Like there's not going to be any industry there, So a lot of it was just working hard and being ready. And when I got lucky, taking advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, just the work ethic alone is so amazing, man. And just the fact that you sit here with us, I still think like, man, during this COVID thing, maybe kick that show off. I think you'd fucking dominate. You're just such a magnetic personality. We want to be around you. We want to know you. We want to hear you talk all the time. So like you being here with us, giving us time and talking, there's vulnerable things. When we start talking disabilities, when we start talking how we went through shit, it gets a little, it's a little tense, but you're really comfortable with it. You're so well versed, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it wasn't easy. It took a long time. I think a misconception that a lot of people have about people with disabilities, I think we mentioned this a little earlier, is like, I didn't always have my shit together. That there was long periods of time where I hated the fact that I had this disability and I hated myself for it. It's not like you just magically, most people aren't just like, well, okay. Like there's a lot of like struggle and internal fights, where you're just like, man, life would be so much easier. Why me? Why did this have to happen to me? And that's part of the struggle. I think it's healthy sometimes to go, why me? But you can't stay in it. It kind of helps you get that perspective. And it was a long road. Had I gotten AGT 5 years ago when I first tried, I wasn't there yet. It would not have been, it would have been ugly. It would not have turned out the same way. I was way more equipped to do it now.
You know, a lot of people will ask, why'd you start? Like if maybe a media interview or something like that will say, why'd you start living adaptive? Why? And I always said entertain. I like to entertain too. You know, like I'm way more joking behind the scenes than with people's stories. But another thing is like I didn't love myself. I fucking hated, like it got to a point as an adult, you know, I had a bad doctor's visit, another like note, this shit's gonna go bad, this is next. And then all of a sudden I'm avoiding things and I'm not hanging out with my kids, and I wasn't going to a swim meet because I didn't want another comment about my legs where somebody would literally go up and wrap their hands around it or say, these are the skinniest things I've ever seen. And I had to get there, years of reframing to a part where I'm actually really grateful that I have this. I am, because if I didn't have this, man, you wouldn't talk to me. Other people, you would at your show. I'd buy an autograph for you. I'm just kidding. But you, like, you wouldn't talk to me, and others, you know, like we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't get the chance to talk to one of the amazing talents that we have in this planet. You know, like on this planet is you, and other people wouldn't care. But like me going through this and me having my experience and building a platform, I'm really grateful for the struggle, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a thing, you know, that, again, would I have chosen this?
Yeah.
If we got to kind of, you know, like a video game, create your own character, would I have chosen this? Probably not.
No.
But I'm grateful because, you know, for as much as you can kind of frame the like what it's taken away from you, you know, it is much harder for me to date. It was hard for me to find jobs and survive. Like there's a ton of negative, but like also AGT wouldn't have given a shit about me. They wouldn't have taken a second look at me if I didn't have this extra story, this extra message along with it, you know, because AGT is not just a talent show. It's a, you know, they're telling stories. They're letting people tell their stories. It's not just who's the best at X talent. You know, it's a person. It's, you know, it's a show about people as well. And you know, it's opened up all these other opportunities for me as well that I might not have gotten if I didn't have this extra thing that pushed me and got me. You know, maybe I wouldn't have this work ethic. Maybe I would have never gotten funny at all if I didn't have to. You know, so you just don't know.
Yeah, you talk about this too. You've mentioned it, and I should note this before, but you say, you know, a lot of comics can get up there and do 2 to 3 minutes. I'd argue not in front of the audience you did or the pressure you're doing, but I don't know. I'm not in the industry, but a lot of comics can do 2 to 3 minutes. And what separates you is definitely your story. It's a fucking amazing story. Everything you did is so incredible, from the background to thinking. Like I sat there and my heart hurt for a little bit because hearing you didn't have a bed, man, things we all take for granted. You didn't have a bed until college. You made it to college. Like we skip over that whole idea. You made it to college. You didn't have a bed. Like that whole thing is missed. Flash forward, you know, like all of that goes into it. Of course, you're AGT material. You're everybody's material. You're everything everybody wants because you're that story.
Yeah. And that's why it was the platform that was my dream to do. Obviously as a comic, I want to do Tonight Show. I would love to be on Comedy Central. Like there's things, but like on those, for the most part, you just get to go out there. You're funny or you're not. The needle doesn't really move. It's not the same kind of credit that it used to be. Where AGT is so important and so dynamic is kind of like you said, like, if all they wanted was a stand-up comic that could be funny for 2 to 3 minutes, there's thousands of us. There are thousands of comics who can go be funny for 3 minutes. There's thousands of people who aren't even professional comedians who might be able to put together 2 minutes and do really well.
Yeah.
But where that platform was so important for me is like I felt for me to finally start to get over the disability is not quite the right word, but to kind of start getting that awareness out and getting that acceptance out. And you have to tell that story. You know, you can't gloss over. I can't ignore something that's so different and so unique up there. I wouldn't be doing myself a service, and I wouldn't be doing the, you know, the limb difference community a service. Like that. That's another reason it's so important for me that I tell my story and I make jokes about it, and it's part of my act and part of my personality. Is what a slap in the face if I went out there and I finally, one of us finally broke through that barrier, and then I went, fuck you guys, I'm never talking about it. You know, like, what a slap in the face to everyone that struggles and does it. So it's like, AGT was wonderful because, you know, a lot of people ask me, and I can't get too much into the how the sausage is made, but they kind of always, people ask, like, well, is it scripted? Do they do this or that? They let me just tell my story. They let me, and I don't know if it was originally what they were hoping to get or what they wanted, but I think it was, I was able just to speak so well and be so articulate and really be vulnerable. Like they didn't have to pull anything out of me. I was happy to tell the story that they just kind of went, oh shit, okay, we we like this guy. Because sometimes, again, it goes back to what we were talking about. Some of the people are just really good at stuff, but they're not natural performers. They're not professional performers yet. So they don't get that part of it's important too. I had so much success because, sure, I was funny, and that's important, but I was also so good in those packages. I was so good in those interviews, just chatting with the judges. I was really good at that. One of my favorite moments of the entire show, I think, gets glossed over a lot, and it makes me sad. But I got it warmed my heart. I got such a big laugh from Howie Mandel and Gabrielle Union for this. It was during the quarterfinals. So you do your performance, you get your judge comments, and then Terry starts talking about, like, all right, if you want to vote for Ryan Niemiller, you get 10. And so kind of doing the, like that bit, nonverbal, but getting to see Howie Mandel and Gabrielle Union lose their shit over that, I was like, this is why the whole thing worked, is because I knew it wasn't just about doing good at your talent. You're selling yourself. You're a brand. And every time that camera's on you, you can do something. You can make a moment. And that's what I went out to do.
Amazing that you can make, like, we're kids of the 80s and 90s, Howie laugh. Like, he's, you know, that what he's sold out, what he's done. That's amazing, man. What a dream.
Again, another thing that's weird, that, like, we're buddies.
What?
You know, we'll chat sometimes on, like, Instagram. He likes stuff like he's name dropped me on interviews, apparently.
I have seen those.
I've seen those. It's just, again, surreal. Just that, like, because, again, just because you're a comedian doesn't mean he has to like you. No. He knows if someone's good or not. Like, I was really nervous. People asked, like, oh, were you worried about Simon? I was like, no, because I know he doesn't know what he's talking about as far as comedy goes. You know, so it's like, but, like, if Howie would have said, you suck, well, he's probably right, you know, because he knows. So for me, the fact that he immediately got on board with me and supported me the whole time was an amazing feeling.
I live in Las Vegas. You put everything you got into the basket, including student loans. You put it all in, man. You're like, even my college is going to be about performance. Everything you've ever done has led up to, like, you know, your jokes at school, to college theater, you know, to pro wrestling, all the way to, like, trying in LA once and trying in Indiana a bunch. And then you came out and did it, man. It's fucking crazy. I mean, that's like all or nothing attitude.
Yeah, it probably would make me a shitty gambler. I don't think you're supposed to go all in so quickly like I did, but for me, like even with those short little moments where I kind of was like, well, maybe I should get a real job, maybe I should do this. It was always short lived because, like, I knew this is what I was supposed to do. Nothing else, as corny as it sounds, nothing else fulfills me as much as performing. Like, some of the jobs I've had are great careers. It's stuff that people buy houses with and support their families with. And I was miserable because it just wasn't fulfilling. And it was a huge risk. I went from having health insurance and making good money to making $200 doing dive bars and hopefully selling some stickers and, like, just kind of going city to city and sleeping in the car and just hoping it worked. And then luckily one person took a shot and it all worked out.
Man, I'm so thankful that we got to talk with you. Like, anything, we can't do anything for you. You do so much for us, like this community. So like all I can say is thank you. Thank you for everything you've done and sitting here right now. And I encourage everybody to get to your shows because like, especially the community, just man, like you're going to make huge impacts for all of us. So really thank you for being here. Thank you for everything, man.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And like one of the cool things too that's happened through comedy and all this is like, this is the first time I've actually started to feel like I'm a part of a community.
Wow.
Because I was always so, my hometown, no one else had a disability like me. My parents didn't have the resources there wasn't stuff like Lucky Finn yet or like those type of things that you could do. So I was kind of just on my own. And for a long time, I felt really isolated because I didn't know other people like me, really. So I kind of felt like it was really literally me against the world. And kind of just part of just having this platform and like having other people kind of reach out and say, then like, like you reaching out and having me do this, like I'm honored to get a chance to do this and get to tell my story more. And hell, we're buddies now. Like we're on the same team. So
thank you. That's awesome.
Thanks for not being a dick. It kind of goes back to the Chris Jericho thing. Thanks for not being a dick.
I would never, and that's awesome for you to say that, man. I really appreciate it. Seriously, thank you. Remember, go to livingadaptive.com to find previous episodes, show notes, contacts for guests like this guest, links to social media accounts, and a bunch of other good stuff. So go there. Peace.